think you always say thank you, oh please. It's a staple of language classes and parental lectures. Say thank you. It's one of the first phrases you learn in a new language and one whose importance is drummed into children through repeat readings of books like the Berenstain Bears Say Please and Thank You, Richard Scarry's Please and Thank You book, and Thank You Mr. Panda. But as it turns out, human beings say thank you far less often than we might think. A new study of everyday language use around the world has found that in informal settings, people almost always complied about requests for an object, service, or help. For their efforts, they received expressions of gratitude only rarely in about one of 20 occasions. This might seem like a damning verdict on human nature or evidence of a global pandemic of rudeness, but to the researchers, it's good news. Our basic stance is one of reciprocity, said Nick Anfield, a linguist at the University of Sydney who led the study. When we ask people to help us, the default is that they will. The study, to be published on Wednesday in the journal Royal Society Open Science, is part of a broader effort to look at language as a tool grounded primarily in social interaction rather than as a vehicle for the expression of ideas. In an earlier paper, Dr. Anfield and colleagues looked at the word huh as used to elicit clarification during conversation. They found variants across 31 languages whose phonetic patterns otherwise varied greatly, suggesting that huh was a rare example of a universal word. In the new paper called Universals and Cultural Diversity in the Expression of Gratitude, a team looked at interactions in 8 languages on 5 continents: English, Italian, Polish, Russian, Lao, Shipala, spoken in Ecuador, Morint Pata, an Aboriginal language in Australia, and Siwu, spoken in Ghana. The researchers didn't examine institutional or business settings where expressions of thanks might be more common, but focused on casual daily interactions among people who knew each other as captured by unattended cameras set up in homes or community areas. Any verbal expressions of gratitude, including in English phrases like good job or sweet, were counted as expressions of thanks. People signal the need for assistance frequently, about every minute and a half, according to the researchers' samples, and they usually get it. Requests were complied with about 7 times more often than not, but those who cooperated were very rarely thanked, nor did they seem to expect it. When no thanks were given, the omission was very rarely commented on. On the other hand, when people did not comply with a request, they usually gave an explanation. It's completely asymmetrical, Dr. Anfield said. People typically don't give their reasons when they comply. This just underlines the fact that cooperation is the default mode. While the study appears to be the first to gather such extensive cross-cultural data on how often people say thank you as opposed to how often they think they do, the low frequency of thanks does not come as a big surprise to some researchers who study reciprocal behavior from an evolutionary point of view. We expect help from close relationships, family and friends, but especially family, said Robin Dunbar, an anthropologist at Oxford who was not involved with the study. That we take that help for granted is indeed interesting because it risks putting such relationships under strain. Dr. Anfield and his colleagues did find some variations across languages. Speakers of English and Italian verbalize thanks significantly more often than speakers of the other languages sampled, but still quite infrequently in only one of 7 instances where a request was complied with. The researchers attribute this to what they call the strong cultural ideology of politeness in Western European cultures. This doesn't mean, however, that English or Italian speakers are actually more grateful. Expressing gratitude and feeling gratitude are not the same thing. Dr. Anfield said, saying thank you may seem foundational to English speakers, but many languages, including one in the study, lack a direct equivalent of that simple phrase. While no reliable data exists, Dr. Anfield said that's probably true of most of the 6,000 to 7,000 languages currently spoken in the world, to say nothing of the Dothraki, the thank-you-free invented language of Game of Thrones, most of which are spoken by small communities where speakers are likely to know each other. In those languages, we don't have the kind of institutional, anonymous exchanges which is where politeness comes into its own. The social implications of giving thanks also vary across cultures. In some languages, a phrase we might translate as thank you is reserved for truly momentous favors, like saving someone's life. In others, frequent thank yous can seem strange or even, as in some South Asian languages, or even insulting. Dr. Anfield, the author of the recent book How We Talk, The Inner Workings of Conversation, said the thank you study eliminated the frequent gap between how we think we use language and the ways we actually do, but it does not, he emphasized, mean that we should stop teaching children to say thank you. In fact, he said the study specifically excluded exchanges involving children out of suspicion that including them would give a misleading picture. People in the home are often concerned with training their children to be polite when they are out in public. Dr. Anfield said, so while parents often require their children to say please and thank you during home life, when the children are absent, adults promptly dispense with all that.